Okay guys, my kitchen is still kind of a wreck, but I have turned my sights on that breakfast/homework area that I'm hoping to pull together in the corner. So today, I'm going to give these two old chairs a little facelift with some paint and new upholstery. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is take the seat off of our chair. All right, so now we have our chair frame. With any paint that you aren't 100% sure that it's not lead-based paint, you want to wear a mask while you're sanding. And we're just gonna go over this with some fine grit sandpaper, just to smooth out some of the areas where the paint is kind of chipped and give us a nice surface for our primer to really stick to. I'm just gonna kind of dust this off with a rag just to knock most of the dust off. Take my mask off. And now we're going to get our mineral spirits. You could wipe this down with just a damp rag, but I want to make sure that every trace of dust and grime is off of the chair so we have a nice, super clean surface for our spray paint. All right, I've got some gloves on to protect my hands, and now we're gonna hit this guy with a coat of primer. I'm using an all-purpose white primer, and I'm going to give it 2 thin coats. All right, make sure that your primer and spray paint are shaken up. And the key to getting a nice, even coat is to stay about 10 to 12 inches away and always keep your can moving. That way you won't get any drips. Don't forget the underside. Make sure to flip that bad boy over and hit it with a coat of primer. Primer is an optional step, but I think you'll find if you use it, you'll get a nice, even finish, and it allows you to use less of your colored spray paint, which tends to be more expensive. If you do get a drip while you're spray painting, let it dry, hit it with a little of that fine grit sandpaper, and then give it another coat of primer. All right, our primer has had a chance to dry, so we're gonna give our first coat of color. I chose this really pretty pink grapefruit coral color because I'm going with some citrusy accents in my kitchen. I'm gonna let that dry, flip it over, give it one more coat. Okay, now it's time to tackle the seat. Now, often you would want to remove the existing fabric, but because these chairs are so old, the staples are really rusted, and I don't really trust myself to be able to get them out without giving myself tetanus. So we're just gonna leave those on and cover it. We're gonna start with 2 layers of upholstery batting. This is just gonna give our chairs a little extra cushion. So we're gonna cut out, leaving about a 2-inch allowance around the seat so that we can fold it over and staple it. For this project, you're going to want to use a really nice and sharp pair of heavy-duty scissors. All right, so we have our batting cut out. Now we're going to staple this to the bottom of the chair. I'm using a big old staple gun for this. And make sure you're not covering any holes that you need to screw into. And we may end up needing to trim a little bit to make sure we're not covering those. I recommend you start on the sides and then work in. So that's going to keep everything nice and taut and even. All right, so once we have our 4 corners, we're just going to kind of work our way around the chair. Make sure when you're doing this that you're not stapling right at the edge of the batting, and also that you're not stapling too close to the edge of the chair. I find it easiest to trim some of the excess and then kind of fold it in on itself. It'll give you a nice, neat corner. Trim up some of the excess batting. Remember, don't get too close to the staples. Now I'm just gonna tap in a couple of these staples that didn't go in all the way. All right, so we have our batting on. It's gonna make our seat all nice and cushy, and now we're gonna put on our fabric. I chose this beautiful blue. It almost looks a little tie-dyed. I think it's gonna look so great with like the pink grapefruit color that I have painted the chairs. So now we're going to cut that out, again, giving, you know, about 2 to 3 inches of allowance around the seat of the chair. And now flip your fabric over and flip your seat over and lay it on top. Now, if you're using a pattern with any kind of straight lines, it is going to be important to line up the straight front of the chair with the pattern. Because there's nothing worse than getting it all stapled, flipping it over, and your lines are all cattywampus. Again, we're going to start in the middle of each side. Once you have your 4 in place, flip it over before you do any more, and just make sure that your front is lined up nicely. So flip it back over and staple, staple, staple. All right, so once again, we're getting to the curve of the seat. So go slow and work your way around the curve, trying to minimize the number of pleats that you get. So you can see there that it has a nice smooth edge, and we're going to trim off this excess fabric later. Generally, you want at least 1 every inch, but you may want more than that, especially in the parts of the chair where people are going to be sitting against it. You don't want the staples to pull or have too much stress on them, and you don't want the fabric to start to pucker. Okay, so for the corners, just like before, we're going to trim some of this excess fabric. First by stapling in the middle. You see, you get a nice, neat corner. So I think we have that pretty well secured. Now grab your sharp fabric scissors and trim the excess. Make sure you leave about a 1/2 inch of the fabric. While you're trimming, if you find any places that look like they're gapping, go ahead and hit it with another staple. Better safe than sorry. And now for the moment of truth. Oh yeah. I think we just need to reattach it to the chair. I gotta say, this little $5 chair is looking like $1,000,000 bucks. I'm gonna go put it in my kitchen. I'll see you guys next time.